You're listening to the Long Game Podcast. I'm your host, Sandra Scaiano. I talk a lot about healing on this podcast. We all have something to heal from in a myriad of ways. And I've shared that I've been on a healing journey and how writing and sharing about it has helped me process things. We're back to the healing conversation again today, highlighting some unique pieces of it. So many of us are affected by events in our past, and I'm hoping that hearing how today's guest has transformed herself and her life can help to meet you where you are on your own journey. I'm joined today by Beth Jones, author of Becoming an Empowered Survivor. You too can heal from trauma and abuse. Beth is an empowered survivor and healing mentor, helping other survivors of trauma and abuse to walk their healing pathway, where she believes that to heal is to hope, evolve, and love, all as action words. Beth's painful but exquisite work to heal has left her thriving, and now it's her mission to help others become empowered survivors by sharing her story about how she healed herself. With deep Texan roots, she is a citizen of the world, having grown up in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Her 30-year career in professional services, which she has now left behind to focus on being a healing mentor, was punctuated by world travels, providing forensic accounting and fact-finding expertise to companies and investigating complex fraud and white-collar crime schemes. Through her international experience, she's gained a global perspective and a deep understanding of human suffering and the gamut of human emotion. We talk today about healing being a lifelong journey and the concept of life-work integration, not balance. Because amidst a personal crisis, when healing needs to happen, you're still living your day-to-day. How do you communicate to those around you? During her healing time, Beth was this long-established corporate executive. So the role of transparency really played here. And we also talk about how work really is just one part of our lives. Beth also shares with us what Second Mountain Ascension is. And it's really more than following your passion or living your second act. And I know you're going to be really intrigued by the Second Mountain concept. And we talk about the process of self-publishing her book, the various pieces that go into supporting self-publishing, and why this route is best for her. But what I love most about Beth's story is that she has really shifted into starting a movement, a healing movement. So today, the long game is Becoming an Empowered Survivor with Beth Jones. In a world where everyone is doing, it's easy to get lost in a sea of comparison, secret tricks, and promises of overnight success. The long game? That's my approach to business. You gotta show up, you gotta do the work, and there are no quick fixes for long-term success. It takes creativity, it takes strategy, and it takes listening to the voice inside you. I'm a web designer, digital strategist, and energetic thinker, bringing you real-world business building experiences, conversations with creators who are out there doing it now, and ideas to spark the energy in your own business. And along the way, we're gonna have a little bit of fun as well. So thanks for being here, and let's get to today's episode. Welcome back to the Long Game Podcast. I am so excited for today's talk. With me today is Beth Jones, and we're gonna talk about a few things with her today. For sure, her book, Becoming an Empowered Survivor, and her sharing her story. Also, that concept of life-work integration amidst a personal crisis, what do you do? How do you manage, right? And also the idea of Second Mountain Ascension. Mm-hmm. And this is something that Beth introduced to me, a concept that she introduced to me. And I think once we really dive into this, so many of you are going to relate. So thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome, Beth Jones.
Thank you, Sandra. I'm super excited to be here with you today.
Yeah. So, let's just dive right in. First of all, a book coming out. We all dream about it. Actually, we're recording this. The book launch is October 8th, 2024. Mm-hmm. It's really a place that you are sharing your story, and you've been on a healing journey. So tell us about the concept and, first of all, that name, becoming an empowered survivor.
Yeah, it's a great name, isn't it?
It
Uh,
really is.
yeah, and that's the work that I've done. So the book, I wrote the book to do two things. So first of all was to crystallize my message about healing. So I'm a survivor of trauma and abuse and came into this world to um, be a victim, which I have been a few times in my life, survive all of that for many, many years, 45 years by the time I got ready to do my healing work, which started about 4 years ago. And then I've healed, and that's the most important part of my life's journey and my life's work is the healing process that I've gone through. And now I've written a book to share with other survivors of trauma and abuse the good news that you too can heal from trauma and abuse, which is the subtitle of the book. And I've written a book around the framework around the world, the word heal, which for me the word heal means to hope, evolve, and love is actions. And that's the framework that I talk to other survivors about going through the healing process. So it's a good news story. It's a fun story. And even though it has some difficult and challenging backstory to it, the real story is about the healing work that I've done and the message, the journey I've taken and a message that I want to share with other survivors that they can do it too and come to the same place that I have, which is joyful.
Yeah, and I think what is really interesting to me too is the things happen to us. I was on my own healing journey and didn't really start until I was
Mm,
50, right? Like
me too. Same.
sometimes we bury, right? We um, just pile things and push it to the side. We compartmentalize.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
um, what I love about this is the idea that there's so much life left and you
Yeah.
can apply this to yourself and heal now and then still have all this time,
Yeah.
right? Without pain, without sorrow,
That's right.
um, whether it's a forgiveness of yourself or others, all of those pieces. So, you know, we can all hit it at a different time in our life.
Yeah, we can. There's so many things I could say in response to what you just said, but I was also 50 when it came time for me to heal. But as I said, we were just a little bit ago, is I know my purpose in this life was to live through what I've lived through, including being a victim, a survivor, and then healing for purposes of the work that I'm going to do in the future. And I do believe that I probably have half of my life left, and I think it's the best part of my life that's yet to come. And so it is a great time for me to be living with so much joy and such a great message to share with other people. But I think the other thing I would say about that is before I got to my healing journey, that place that I lived in was really loneliness, isolation, loneliness, and healing helped me to discover that I was a survivor, that I had been a victim. I really had repressed a lot of that as part of surviving in my life. And so I had to go through a process of coming to terms with all of that, but then being very clear of what my purpose is.
Yeah, I'm going to read a passage that you've written in I believe, the introduction of your book. Are you ready to breathe again? Breaking through the heart constraining bind of your trauma and abuse? Do you feel underwater, drowning in a sea of juxtapositions in your life? Darkness versus light, secrets versus truth, suffering versus contentment, and surviving versus thriving. What if you could break through the water's surface and emerge into a new life, leaving the depth and darkness of your past experiences as you transform and soar into your future? I love that passage. For me, it's just the ultimate of, you named it, and it's where you were and where you're going. Um, and so I do want to shift into our second point because it all of this
Sure.
ties together.
Mm,
But that idea of living your life amidst a personal crisis, right? Like,
yeah.
so you were 50, you had this big corporate job
Yeah.
that you've been doing for 30 years,
Yeah.
and this work starts emerging within you,
Yeah.
and you got to keep your shit together on the outside, right? I mean, how, I want to dig into that a little bit because us, all of us are working our own path in one way or another. And
Mm,
there are all these pieces now, whether it's family and being taking care of elders or children and all of these things that can happen,
yeah,
medical, healing in different ways.
yeah, yeah,
Let's talk a little bit about that, like, because when this happened to you, it hit you. It
yeah,
was like, okay, I've got to deal with,
yeah,
the past 45 years.
yeah. Now, one of the things that I say in the corporate world when I still talk to the people in the corporate world is that sort of a news flash for everybody who's in charge of people who work for them, life happens. Right? So to
Yeah.
every single one of us who is an employee in an organization, no matter what level we're at, life happens. And I experienced that with people that I worked with over the years as they would have their own personal situations that would come up, and I would do the best that I could to manage and help them get through whatever they were dealing with. And then suddenly one day I woke up and it was my turn, and I had a pretty large team that I was responsible for and had accountability to the organization and also to our clients. But when I began the intense and focused part of my healing journey, so this is when I was 50, at a life altering event where I literally experienced rebirth as a human being. So when you were just reading about the juxtapositions from the passage in the book, that was the defining moment of when those juxtapositions came to life for me. So I literally walked into a therapy room one day as one person and walked out another person. So the me that walked in died and somebody else was born. And that's the me that I am now, the person that I've become as I've gone through my healing journey. But immediately after that event, I was in a really bad place emotionally because I was very confused about my life, very confused about what I had made myself to believe about my life, and just really very confused about who I was and what I'd been through. It's a hard place to be when you're 50 to wake up and literally go, I have no idea who I
50,
am.
successful,
Very successful.
thriving and
Well,
all look from the outside
absolutely.
looking in.
Absolutely. That's what everybody believed. That's what I believed
Yes.
about myself, right? That's what I believed about myself. But what I came to discover is that I wore a lot of masks, a lot of identities that were masks over the real me. And I bought into those masks. I bought into those identities. And as I worked to shed them and to dig down and to discover who I truly am, um, a lot of that life went to the wayside and I don't have it with me anymore. And that's fine. It's great. It's been wonderful for me transitioning over. But that time period when I'm trying to come to terms with all of that was really, really hard. And I had to navigate my way through the organization that I was working for because I couldn't just check out and say, "Oh, sorry, I need to go deal with my personal life now, and I can't do what you need me to do from in terms of the responsibility and the accountability that you've given to me in the organization." And so I was dealing with my own personal situation, but also demonstrating to others who looked up to me and reported to me, this is how you do it in a professional way. And so the biggest thing for me was really engaging with people who I was going to find out quickly whether or not I could actually trust them, and they were true sponsors, true mentors, true supporters of me and the organization. And I actually had a really great experience with that. I know a lot of people are afraid, and I've heard this quite a lot as I've talked to people in organizations when they go through something like this, they're afraid to speak to their peers or to their managers or other leaders in the organization because they're fearful of some sort of a negative repercussion against them. But my experience was actually really great. I feel like a lot of that is because of the way that I handled it. So I was very open and transparent with what I was dealing with, but I also was genuine in asking for the help that I needed. Right? And so I didn't let my responsibilities go by the wayside while I was dealing with what I needed to deal with. But it was a good lesson for me in how what I now call life and work integration. We've had this awful, and I say it's awful phrase for a long time called work-life balance
Yeah.
in the corporate world, which I think is completely wrong because work is a small part of our life. So it should be flipped around, I believe. We integrate work into our life, not life into
Into
our
work.
work. And I do believe it's truly about integration, right? About figuring out how to make them work together for our best good as individuals, right? And so a lot of that is in how you communicate with the organization about where you are at any given time and what it is that you need. And I think that's particularly important when you're going through something that's really challenging and difficult. I mean, you know, when I was going through this in the early days of this intense and focused part of my healing journey, there were literally days when I couldn't get out of bed. I was so distraught, and really just not in a good place emotionally because of my confusion about what I had believed about my life, which suddenly wasn't truth at all, right? So being able to communicate as best I could at that point in time with what I understood about my situation was really important in being able to effectively deal with my work situation at the time.
And, for everyone listening, Beth has taken this journey
Mm.
and has since left her corporate job and
Ah,
is becoming a mentor in people's personal healing journeys.
that's right.
So, uh, you know, it's all the learnings of 30 years in corporate and all that integration of work into life that you're now leading a different life, which really leads us into that second mountain piece. Like, let's talk about this
Yeah.
concept. This is really, it's a beautiful way to say what this is. So let's talk about second mountain ascension.
Yes, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, and it is a transition that I am making right now. So, Second Mountain, there's a book out there by a guy called David Brooks, and the book is The Second Mountain: The Quest for Moral Life. And in this book, um, David talks about people who are First Mountain people, and they are, when I think about them, I think about my my old me, my former me, who was a professional in the corporate world, climbing the corporate ladder. I'm not so much motivated by money and title, but that's kind of who First Mountain people are. That's what they're doing. They're
And that's
very
what goes with that whole thing, right?
absolutely. Well,
It
we
goes,
all
it's
many,
it's
many, many of us
money,
do it.
it's
Title,
status, it's
yeah,
all of
and
that.
yeah, and if you're good at what you do, which I was really good, then you just naturally move up, right? And
Yep.
so, and with that, your houses get bigger and you have more cars and you have more stuff, all of that stuff. So really, but a lot of that is about a sort of what he refers to and what I think of as like a self-centered life. And I don't mean that in an egotistical or a negative way, but really focusing on who am I and what am I accomplishing, right? And you can still be in service of people like I was in my corporate job. I served my clients, I served my team. So I still was in service in that arena. But what I was doing ultimately was primarily serving me in terms of what I was getting. The outcome that I was making was serving me. Second Mountain people are in service to a much broader set of people, right? So they are in service to a community, they may be in service to spirituality, they may be in service to a family unit, um, and they're there really to help a lot of people to do whatever it is that they're helping the people with, right? That they're really focused on that community. And that's me. That's where I am now, is focusing on a community of people who are like me, who are survivors of trauma and abuse who need to heal. So the very interesting thing about what David talks about in Second Mountain in this book is that between the two mountains, there's a valley. And most people who become Second Mountain people will go through the valley, and the valley usually happens with some sort of a life altering event. And so that's me, literally the event that I had the day that I became aware that I really had some stuff that I needed to heal from. I went into that valley, and I've been in the valley for, I don't know, about 4 years now. 2 years I was deep in the valley, but the last couple of years I'm climbing up that mountain to do my second mountain work now, right? And that's the second mountain ascension that I'm going through now, which the book is a huge part of that because it's helping me to get my message out to my community, the people who I will work with and mentor, as you mentioned, to help them heal along their pathway. So um, It's a cool book. It's a cool concept.
It is. And
Um,
it's like you
it's
can visualize it, right? Like
yeah,
it's a graphic
you can.
description, a graphic term
Yeah,
with the two mountains. And we've all done that. I mean, so many of my listeners right now they had a corporate gig or they were on their path to life and
yeah,
something shifted, right? It
yeah,
could have been, it's so many things. And when you're choosing your, sometimes it's called your second act. Um, it's more of what you want it to be. It's
yeah,
more about what you want to bring forth for a larger goal
yeah.
versus the individualism. It's that community versus individualism in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that that's very true. And for me, part of my healing journey in the last 4 years was very focused on self-discovery, evolution as an individual, and really learning about who I was. And part of that was discovering my life's purpose, which is where I learned that the work I'm now going to be doing on Second Mountain is my life's purpose. And like literally, I'm born into this world to do this work. And but I didn't know that for a long time, and I think a lot of people who shift probably go through the same thing, right? You're very much in your first mountain or your first act, whatever you want to call it. This is what I do, who I am, but you feel something innate inside of you that just doesn't feel right. It doesn't really sit comfortably with you. And I have to say, in the work that I did on my first mountain, I was very good at it, and I was very happy doing it. It sustained me, and I'm not sure I would say it completely fulfilled me, but it was work that I did enjoy doing. But still, I had this pull for about 10 years before I had my life altering event, that my life's purpose wasn't quite met. And of course, I was still living part of my life's purpose because I still had to finish some of the survivorship work that I was going through and relationships that I was in particular. I had to finish that work before I could get to what I do now. But there was that pull inside of me that something was off in terms of purpose. I think a lot of us experience that, right? When we're shifting, we know we should be doing something different, but have a hard time figuring out what it is. So I would just say, be patient because you will
Well,
discover it for
it's
sure.
interesting too because you know if you read the
Yeah,
definition and what he talks about in the book is um, that second mountain, it involves a life of service, so to speak, but there are so many ways to interpret that,
yeah,
right? There
there
are
are.
just so many ways. It doesn't mean go off and join the Peace Corps. It doesn't
Yes,
mean just community service where it's I feel that so many of us are doing that in our own way through our own ideas and the work that we do, just
yeah,
like you're doing that through
yeah,
being a healing mentor for people on
yeah,
their journey, right? Like helping people through that process. You can still be an artist and it can be a life of service, right? Like there's just
yeah,
so many
absolutely.
ways to interpret it of what you're bringing out and how you're building community in your world.
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned being an artist, which I am an artist. I love to paint. That's kind of, I had my brothers. That's what I would be doing was painting, right? I mean, and art is very emotional, right? And so you're conveying, when you're putting art out into the world, any form of art, you are conveying emotion, right? And so you are in service to people because there's a vulnerability and authenticity that's coming out of you through your art that speaks to people, whether you know it or not. That's what happens, right? And so you are in service to people as an author. And I mentioned, being in service in the organizations that I worked in the past to the people that I worked with and to my clients. And my clients, the vast majority of them were dealing with some very challenging situations, quite often with government regulators from around the world, and difficult for the company, difficult for the employees who were dealing with that, difficult for my team that was trying to help our client deal with the difficult situation, right? So being in service even in those environments. So I think you're right about the ways that we can be in service and really thinking about that for ourselves, right? And looking at how we're doing it and trying to expand on that is a great place to start. Right?
And I mean, we've heard this before. I mean, you were just saying it in different words, but that idea of following your passion, right? If you like, that's where you're being of service, right?
Yes,
If you're
that's right.
a coach, if you're you can be a fitness coach and you're still being of service. It's
Yeah.
as a web designer, I feel so in service that I help people get their message out
Yes,
further
you
and,
do, and you're great
do
at it.
all these things that
Yeah,
people don't want to do for themselves
yeah,
necessarily. So, but
yes,
it all comes back to that you've got to be charged about what you're doing. You've
yeah,
got to have
yeah.
that vibe. And that is really where the second mountain piece comes in, because it can be anything.
Can be
And,
anything. Yes, that's exactly right.
anything that
Yeah,
you're bringing passion to and you're really building it.
yeah.
Um, I thought that was really, I love that whole concept. I haven't read the whole book, but I have done a lot of research
Such a
on the
great
book.
book. Such a
And,
great book. I tell
you know,
everybody about that book. I don't know because I feel like when he wrote that book, he wrote it for me. He doesn't know it, and I've never met him. And someday maybe I will get to meet him. But so powerful, And there's some words in the book that were a turning point for me in terms of moving forward in earnest in this part of the path, right? So it was actually, led up to about 3 or 4 months before I committed to write the book. And I tell people I've been on a divinely led path for a while now, and reading his book was a step on that path to me getting up my second mountain. But literally, I mean, I feel like I hear God speaking to me and touching me from time to time. And then there's David Brooks talking to me, right, about this whole second mountain concept. And getting out there and doing the work that I'm really called to do, which
mhm.
and is what I'm doing now. So it's a powerful book. So for all your listeners out there in the audience, I would highly recommend the book
Well,
if
we'll
you're
link to it in the
interested.
show notes as well,
Yeah,
so people can
yeah, that would
easily
be great.
find it.
Yeah,
And of course, we'll link to uh, your book and your
thank
site so
you,
that people will be able to
thank
find it
you.
and really dig into your story. You know, what I think is so interesting is, there are these two roads that you can have an experience and you can let it consume you and overwhelm you. And like we talked about compartmentalizing earlier, like you can just keep stuffing it down.
Yeah,
Um, and so, really, with facing it, I mean, that is just so courageous. You
thank
know,
you.
and I say that also coming from my own experience of like, it's painful. And
It sucks.
there was a lot of times I didn't know the words to even
Uh,
now, that's one of the hardest things
been
is like
there,
the
totally been there,
words to describe the experiences,
totally been there.
because you have to, right?
Yeah,
For yourself. And
yeah,
um, so tell me a little bit about the work that you're going into with the mentoring and the community that you're building so that you're creating this space for people to be able to feel comfortable on that
yeah.
journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a few things that go into that. I think, one of the biggest things for me is creating a safe place where people can communicate about what it is that they're experiencing, right? And, in creating that safe place, there's some vulnerability that goes into that. And I want to be able to share with people at a deeper level than what I would publicly, right? So I find that people are more open to engaging and really digging into thinking about and doing their own healing work when they see somebody on the other side who's willing to share what they're going through. I tell people that I'm going to be healing for my entire life, and I've done a massive amount of work to heal from what I've been through in my past, that stuffing of things away. Mine was a 45-year-old wall that was 45 years tall and 45 years thick, right? Once I got to the point of knowing, oh, I see you, I'm going to break you down now, right? But I'm still going to be going through the healing process, although much more quickly than I've ever done in the past because I'm human, right? And what I'm trying to help people with is overcoming trauma and abuse, and it's a human condition, and it's something that we all have suffered and all will suffer. I will suffer more of it in my life to come. What I want people to see is me going through the healing experience. And a part of why I've created this community is to be very authentic and transparent and vulnerable about what I'm going through with the hope of inspiring them to say, it's okay, this work is hard and um, it happens to all of us and I can overcome it. That's what I really want people to know is that you don't have to live with that kind of um, negative burden, or as I say, the heart constraining binds from trauma and abuse. We don't have to live like that. And I want people to see that. And that really is what the community is about, is for me to be able to engage in a way where I inspire people to get on their healing pathway. And then once they're on it, as I said, and I'm not going to lie, and I'm very honest about this. I mean, the work sucks. It's hard. It can be really difficult because of what you experience to heal. But I know that it's possible to overcome all of those challenges. And I want to help people to do that. And working with people as they engage with different tools, various therapy modalities, or their wellness program, or their artwork, or whatever it is that they do for their creative outlet, all kind of different tools that I've used to heal. I want to help people in their journey to figure out how to bring those modalities together for themselves to be able to come to the same place that I've come to, where I flipped all those juxtapositions that you've read on their head, and I'm now actually thriving in my life, content and thriving, having overcome my suffering and what I've been through in the past.
Yeah, one of the things that you do that I love is that sharing of resources and tools. Those things
Yeah.
are like, when you're in it, you're digging and you're looking, but
Um,
the we were even talking early on. We know each other. We were sharing some, you know, people that you should look at this and read
yeah.
her, and
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's
Yeah.
like there's so much out there. Like I
Yeah.
always
Yeah.
say, how can one person
Yeah.
know it all? You
Yes.
can't. So to just get a head start with some of these resources or books or ideas and
Yeah.
places for
Yeah.
support,
Yeah.
those type of things, the tools to use,
Yeah.
and how you can use them and how they can help you,
Yes.
I think is really an important piece of that community, because you are going to be doing the mentoring piece and working with people individually, but there's so much out there that
There is.
people, it isn't just one modality, so to speak, that you're going
No.
to tap in, that
No.
people can tap into.
Yeah.
So, I love that idea of resources and tools to help people, because there's so much to take in.
Yeah. There is so much, and it's important to make them work for you, which is also what I talk to people a lot. Therapy is a good example of that, and making sure that you work at therapy to get it to work for you. So it's kind of like, your emotional and your mental health is your physical health as well, right? So if you were dealing with some sort of a very serious or life-threatening illness, you're really going to dig in and take control of making sure that you're getting the best treatment and the best providers, and it's working for you in the way that it needs to work. I mean, therapy, as an example, is no different. Right? But it's hard because in order to get to the right therapist, sometimes you're sharing your story more than one time, maybe multiple times, and that is really hard work, and it can be deflating when you think you've shared it and you've gone 2 or 3 sessions, and now you're not connecting with this person for whatever reason, right? But you really have to keep going. And that has been my experience. And I talk about this in the book, right? I mean, I spent probably 25 or 30 years going through therapy that just did not work for me, knowing this innate pull in me, another innate pull, knowing that I needed help, but I had no idea why or what I needed help from. And I never could find a therapist who could engage with me in a way to help me until I entered real trauma therapy with my trauma therapist. But I didn't know that I needed a trauma therapist until I went through the different
Hmm.
experiences that I had, where a very close friend of mine said, "Hey, you need trauma therapy. You're sick. What you're describing is not normal, and you need help." And that set me down the path that I went on. But I've had these experiences, and I want to help people benefit from what I've already done and what I've already been through, to be able to maybe get a slight leg up or a slight step
Yes.
forward on the healing pathway, where I can say to them, "Hey, if this isn't working, you might want to try this," right? And so that's really important to me, to share that with people and to help them to sort of find that holistic approach to their healing journey, to overcome whatever it is that they need to overcome.
And
Yeah.
when you mentioned the book, that's no easy process.
No.
I mean,
Definition, no.
right? So many of us are like, yes, the book, I want to write the book, but like,
Yeah.
and it's been steps. You've shared your
Yeah.
story in a multi-author publication, and then worked your way over. So tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that process and self-publishing.
Yeah, so that whole thing, the whole writing process. I mentioned being divinely led before, and actually, you and I met 2 years ago, when my story, what I call the Cliff Note version, was coming out in that collaborative book. Um, and actually, the woman who was primarily responsible for that series of books, she's actually one of my fraternity sisters from college, and we had sort of separated, like routine contact with each other over the years and had become acquaintances or friends through social media, but really hadn't had much contact with each other for a number of years. But as I was going through my healing journey, part of the divinely led process that I've been through, she kept popping up in my social media feeds because she is a master storyteller, and that's what she does is she helps people to pull their stories out for whatever the purpose their story is meant to do in the world, like to shine their light. Light Beam, this is her organization, right? And she kept popping up in my feed, and I was like, oh, I'm intrigued by this. And so I set some time to visit with her, and I spent 3 hours with her one day, just what I call word vomit back then, because I was literally just pouring out my story and all over the place with it, and like it had no organization to it whatsoever. And of course, I mean, I'm in the throes of healing still, and so I know what's happening, but I also know there's this powerful story emerging in me. And she was like, "Oh, well, you got to write for this book," and I was like, okay. So I wrote one chapter, and it's funny because at the end of that, when that was done, I was like, oh, one and done. That's it. I am never writing again.
Right. That is really putting yourself out there. Yeah.
It was. And I use that absolute word that I don't ever use, never, which I've learned a million times in my life. Never say never.
Stop.
I've learned that lesson so
Just
many times.
stop. Just
I keep
stop. Yeah.
learning it, right? But I used it then, never writing again. Right? And then, so fast forward now 2 years, and here comes the book. And not only my first solo book, but I know there are more coming. I wrote a lot professionally, and I'm a good writer, and I know I'm a good writer. There is a difference between writing professionally with what I used to do and writing personally, where you are putting yourself out there in a very vulnerable way, in a very truthful and authentic way. There's a big difference. And what I'm writing about is not easy. Some of it's not.
Yeah.
It's difficult to read about and to hear about. So that's been an interesting process. And I also tell people that you don't write about what I write about unless you are in a healed place with respect to what you are writing about, because it's not a place to be cathartic, right? When you're telling this kind of story and you're trying to communicate with people in the way I'm trying to communicate, you need to be healed already. So that's all part of my journey. Um, and to say, I know I will write more books now. And it's been an amazing experience. This part of my journey has been truly amazing, from meeting April 35 plus years ago when I met her to where now
It's
I have
funny
this
how it
amazing
all it
community
all
of
comes back, right? It's
engaged
in
with.
divine right
And
order
yeah,
of
yeah,
who is supposed to be in your life and just
yeah,
what kept showing up for you
yes,
on
yes,
social media as well. I think
yes,
that's really,
yeah, yeah, it is cool.
it
So
kept
yeah,
coming back and
yeah,
pulling you in
yeah.
that way.
So you mentioned self-publishing. I am self-publishing the book, and one of the main reasons for that is that I wanted to keep full creative control over my content. This is my story, and it needs to be told in the way that I feel like it needs to be told, and I feel like that is a divinely inspired message. It's a message that comes through me. I am just the conduit for the message, and so keeping my creative control over the content as the book came to life. It's out there. I've hit go on the publish button for it to go out on October 8th, so it's out there. That as I was creating that, and then what I'll do with the content in the future, I wanted to have full control over that. So self-publishing was the right way for me. Um, the interesting thing about self-publishing is that launching the book becomes entirely your responsibility. I tell people,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
writing a book is one thing, but launching a book is a
yeah.
whole other project. So it's fun. I'm enjoying it, but it is a lot of work that I've taken on myself, which is okay. It's the right path for me. But I knew from the moment that my coach explained to me the difference between the two publishing directions. I knew self-publishing was for me, and I haven't looked back once or questioned even once choosing that route. So it's been cool.
Yeah, it's super cool. And it's all part of that second mountain for you
It is.
of I'm saying it how I need to say it
Yep.
and putting it
Yep.
out there and getting your
That's
message
right.
out there
That's right.
and
That's right. Yeah.
just broadening,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
wider with your
Yeah.
ripple.
Yeah. 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 Which is what it is. It's a movement that I'm starting. So I'm already in it. The book the book really launches the movement out into the world, and I've got a great team around me, including you, to help me do
Yeah,
that.
thank you.
So
Yeah,
it's amazing.
and it is amazing. And we all have something in us that we
We
need
do. Every
to,
one of us.
heal, move on from, look back, And there's so many pieces to your story too, because there's the main thread, but then there's other pieces along the way
Oh
in
yeah.
those years and that
Oh yeah.
healing journey.
Oh yeah.
So I encourage everyone, I'll be posting about the book, and you'll be
Thank you.
hearing about
Thank
it.
you.
Everything's in the show notes as well, to be able to go and purchase the book, and support this type of mission, and this
It is a
work
mission.
that's
It is
being
a
done.
mission. Yeah. Yeah.
It is a
Yeah.
mission.
Yeah.
Thanks
Like,
so much for coming. We'll have links
so
to
happy to have been here.
empowersurvivors.com.
Thanks for
And
having me. Thank you.
all right,
All right.
everyone, we will see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for joining me today. You can access more information, links mentioned in this episode, and the show notes at thelonggamepodcast.net. If today's show connected with you in some way, please share it with your friends or hop on and leave a review. Both of these make a really big difference. All right, until next time, keep playing the long game.